Thank you so much, Charlotte, and thank you all for being here. First of all, I want to thank really the people who made this amazing event possible. So first of all, it's the Haaretz family, so all the people present here, Amos, Hillel, Rami, Aluf, Charlotte, the amazing Haaretz team. I think that the Jewish people and the Jewish democratic state can be really proud of these people. Then the people who made this possible, the contributors, our hosts here, and then the Landau family. David Landau did not always love me. I always loved David. He was an amazing journalist, an amazing person, an amazing Jew, and an amazing Zionist. In many ways, he was larger than life. So even when we had our difficult moments, I always deeply cherished what David is all about, and I'm so happy that we are having this gathering in his memory. I thought that it's a bit of Israeli chutzpah of us to come with our local provincial dramas here when you're experiencing your big drama here. But the great panel regarding Brexit, I think, solved that problem. What I will try to do, and hopefully I will try to cover a lot of territory in a brief way, hopefully not take too much of your time. But what I may try to do is rock the boat. In many ways, my role in Haaretz is to tell the Haaretz readers and some of the Haaretz writers to do with them what Haaretz does with other Israelis. To challenge some dogmas, to bring about some unconventional views, and to speak about some inconvenient truths. So I think it would be a waste of time not to do this here, because as you'll soon hear, I think we are in a critical junction, and I think the need to have a candid, intelligent, open, respectful, civilized conversation is essential. One apology for those of you, and I hope there are many of you who are not from liberal Zionists. I will be speaking for the mishpucha. I will be speaking about liberal Zionism and liberal Zionists and what is our role and what are the challenges we face. I think Israel faces an existential danger, existential threat. Unlike many of my colleagues, I'm an alarmist regarding Iran, Hezbollah, many of our neighbors in the Middle East. I think security problems and issues are not over, contrary to what was said here. But the main challenge facing Israel is not all threats. Because there is no Syrian army that will invade the Golan Heights, there are no Iraqi missiles that will land in Tel Aviv, and there is no hostile Egyptian army that will cross the Sinai Desert. So the real, new, existential threat Israel faces, it's not that new, but now it's so apparent, is threefold. One is the fact that the one-state situation is developing into a cancer that will soon be irreversible. In my mind, we have no more than a decade. Probably much less than a decade. But if the present processes, trends, go on, if we will have 700, 800 first settlers in the West Bank in 2025, 2026, the Zionist project will be over. The Zionist project will be over. We might not feel it that same day. We might actually see it and feel it 20 years later. But we will pass the point of no return in these coming years. The second challenge facing Israel is the attack on its legitimacy. We've just heard the news in Haaretz about the way Tzipi Livni was treated here. This is not a major story yet, but it's a sign of where we are heading. Israel is losing its legitimacy. For right reasons, for wrong reasons, I think that mainly for wrong reasons, but this is something that is happening. Some Israelis believe that the Chinese or the Russians, the Putins and the Erdogans would save us. It's wrong. If Israel will become a pariah state, if the West turns its back on Israel, we have no future. This is much more dangerous for us today than all the security problems we face. The third element of this existential threat is the attack on Israel's democracy. I'm no Likudnik. I've never voted for the Likud. Every morning I wake up, I miss the Likud. The new Israeli right, the radical religious and non-religious right, is betraying the Jabotinsky tradition, not labor Zionism. We see now an unprecedented attack on the democratic values and the democratic institutions that made Israel so great. Who is to be blamed? The Israeli right has to be blamed. Settlements? My family traveled from Hampstead to London, to Jerusalem, just so that there will be one country in the world where the Jews will be a majority. So the Jewish people can express themselves politically in a democratic context. This is Zionism. This is what it's all about. We've been a minority and we are a minority in so many countries. And if we are to be a minority, it's much more nicer. It's not much nicer here than in the Middle East. What do these people who think they are Zionists what do they think they're doing? By trying to grab the entire land, by creating a situation where 40, 45, 50, 55% of the population under Israeli rule are Palestinians. This is unfair to the Palestinians. They suffer, but it endangers us. Occupation is much more dangerous for Israelis than it is for Palestinians. The right is to be blamed for that. The attack on the loss of legitimacy. We used to be so smart. We understood that this is a fragile project that needs international legitimacy and international support. First, we created this alliance with Great Britain, with the British Empire, then with the French, and then with the Americans. With all due respect to Israeli heroism and pioneers and pilots and paratroopers, without that Western support, we would not have survived the day. Today, day in and day out, members of Knesset and members of the cabinet are eroding this alliance and are undermining Israel's legitimacy. And the attack on democracy? First, they went after Haaretz. They went after the Smolanim, the lefties. Then they went after the Supreme Court. Now they go after the IDF. These people went crazy. They are attacking the very essence of Israel. Again, it's not only morality. It's not my views, the values of Haaretz. This goes against the grain of the Zionist project. And yet, although the right is to be blamed for this dangerous situation, this unprecedented danger, I'm not into the blame game. Because here, we, liberal Zionists, have to ask ourselves as well, where were we wrong? How did this come to be? Why did benign Israel almost evaporate politically? In my mind, we made 3 or 4 fundamental mistakes. And I'll probably be challenging the views of some people in this audience. The first is the old concept of peace. The Israeli left, the international community, were totally right regarding occupation and settlements, how futile and dangerous they are. But we promised a peace that was not there. When I tried to convince my fellow Israelis in the 1990s that peace will prevail, we were hoping that the Middle East will become 21st century Europe. Now we have 11th century Europe just outside our borders. And sadly, Europe is not what it used to be either. We promised something. When we promised this Scandinavian, European-like peace, it was not well-founded. We failed in 1993, we didn't admit it. We failed in 2000, we didn't admit it. We failed in 2005, we did not admit it. We have to acknowledge the fact that we were wrong too. They were evil, but we made mistakes too. The second mistake was the fact that peace, and in many ways liberal democratic values, have become associated with a kind of waspy elite, what I call the white Ashkenazi supporters of peace. Sadly, we did not find a way to communicate with our own people. Peace, liberalism, democracy became associated with prosperous, privileged Tel Aviv. If we don't deal with that issue, we cannot win the minds and hearts of many Israelis. The third mistake was that we, being so desperate for good reasons, because of the Likud and the settlers and the occupation and all that, we developed a negative ethos. We began living against Begin, against Shamir, against Netanyahu. We lost the positive. We became too critical, too judgmental, again, for good reasons. But it developed into a kind of negative state of mind. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama did not win the American elections with a negative ethos. If you don't have something positive, something inspirational to say, you don't have a chance in the political game. And then the fourth mistake that has to do with this was being politically impotent. As much as I despise the settlement project, the settlers have been so much more sophisticated politically than we've been. They've been doing all the right things for the wrong cause. And while they've been doing that, taking over the country, we sat in our corner, our shouting corner, like some sort of protest movement from the 1970s. We didn't act in a sophisticated political way. To put it in a sentence, the Israeli left, the liberal Zionists, are totally right when in criticizing the policies of this government and previous governments, occupation, settlement, the drift to the nationalism, even the attack from like political, religious elements on our democracy. But this is just 1/3 of reality. We lost the vocabulary how to describe the greatness of Israel, the miracle of Israel, and we lost the vocabulary how do we deal with Palestinian extremism and Arab political failure. There is Jewish fascism. There is Israeli fascism on the fringes. But there is also Palestinian fascism. And there is Arab extremism. Where does it say that liberals cannot talk about it? Where does it say that we should shut up when horrible things are happening around us? By focusing only on Israeli evil, only on Israeli mistakes, we lost the ability to deal with reality, and we lost the ability to communicate with our own people. The outcome of this is the great Israelis, the real Zionists, and I totally agree with what Amos said this morning, are perceived now as in Israel as detached from reality, as if we do not know where we live, and we are perceived as detached from Israeli society. These are the two great challenges. Israel is a democracy. If we want to maintain it as a democracy, if we want to save it, we have to use democratic tools in order to convince our fellow Israelis that we are not detached from reality and we are not detached from Israeli society. How do we do this? I'll try to be brief. One, we need a new peace concept. The problem with the concept of the two-state solution is the word solution. There is no solution tomorrow morning. And this illusion that only if we'd given Abbas another 0.5%, if only that, if Barak was more polite, if Olmert was more generous. There is no two-state solution tomorrow because the conflict is so deep and the environment is so hostile. We must endorse a two-state vision, launch two-state dynamics, and create a two-state state as soon as possible within a regional context. The second issue, the second answer, is do Israeli nation building. Many years ago, Amos Oz went to Bet Shemesh, and the people of Bet Shemesh told you, you lefties, you have a heart for the Palestinians, but you don't have a heart for us. We have to change that. We have to weave the peace project, the end of occupation project, the Saving Israel project into a nation-building project, which addresses social issues, economic issues, identity issues, ethos issues. It cannot be a separate issue. Then, the third thing that we must do, which is part of it, is a dialogue with our fellow Israelis. It is unacceptable that we will go anywhere in the world to talk to the Palestinians, which we should do, but we don't talk and don't listen with respect to our fellow Israelis. We have to respect their fears, their concerns, their traditions, their values. We need that dialogue. The fourth thing is having a dialogue with the progressive elements in the West and with the young Jews of the diaspora. I totally subscribe to what Mick Davis said here, and I'm appalled by what some Israelis said here. Every Jew in the diaspora has a stake in Israel. I don't want Jews of the diaspora to be shut up. On the contrary, what happens to us affects you, what happens to you affects us. It is totally unacceptable that you will be expected to stand by Israel, whatever happens, and you will not have a say in where Israel is going. Because my life has become a large extent about the dialogue with the millennials, with the young Jews of the diaspora in this country, in America, and elsewhere. I don't want to get into that deep issue, but this is a critical issue. If we don't listen to the young people, first to the young Jews of the diaspora, if we don't find a way to inspire them, to be relevant for them, to understand their concepts, and actually tie Israel into their world, we're endangering the future. The fifth thing that we must do is to just do. It's enough of petition writing. It's enough of a protest movement. It's time for us to grow up, to be leaders, to act, and to act in the real world as it really is. 99 years ago, in this city, the negotiation had begun which led to the Balfour Declaration. Without the greatness of the Anglo-Jewish community, without the genius of Chaim Weizmann's Zionism, we would not have had Israel. There's talk of anti-Semitism, and I'm aware, although I'm an Israeli-born Israeli, I have a long Jewish nose and I can sense anti-Semitism. But there was much more anti-Semitism in this city in 1916, 1917 than there is today. But we had sechel. We were smart. We combined realism with morality, and we managed to extract the Balfour Declaration right here, which shaped our history. I ask all of you present here, the Anglo-Jewish community, the progressive forces in the world, Jews and non-Jews, to join with benign, enlightened Israelis in the project of saving Israel. There is no time, but in my mind, there is hope. Let's act upon it. Thank you very much.